Ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of air safety and your own personal safety, we ask that you keep a close watch on your carry-on and personal items.
Welcome to the AeroExploration podcast, where aviation's past, present, and future meet. We explore the stories that build aviation history, take you inside the industry today, and uncover the career paths and innovations keeping the industry in motion. We go behind the scenes, into the cockpit, and onto the ramp, meeting the people and discovering the places that define aviation. If it's part of the flying world, you'll find it here. This is AeroExploration.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the AeroExploration podcast. My name is Jim. I'm a CFI, an aviation podcaster, and just overall aviation enthusiast, and I'm happy to have you with me. So on this episode, I'm going to speak with Marcus Miller. He's better known online as Prop Hat Cat, and he's an air traffic controller who's been building a following by breaking down aviation, specifically air traffic control, in a way that makes sense for people. So in the interview section, we're going to talk all about that with Marcus in just a minute. So before I get into the episode, I have been super engaged with the Artemis II mission. I think it is so cool that after all of this time, we are sending people back out into deep space, out around the moon and back, and it was just really incredible to watch. I also think it's really remarkable that this time around, you don't just get to see little snippets here and there, but there was like a live broadcast all the time on NASA's YouTube channel. So as I was sitting at my desk at work, I would kind of work and lurk, as someone might say, and I would kind of have that on in the background just to see and hear the cool things that they're doing. And then there was the flyby day. Suffice to say, I have a new background on my computer and on my phone because of the cool pictures they were able to get of the lunar surface, the Earth rise at the moon, and just cool stuff like that. So I'm super intrigued to see where the Artemis missions go. I think the next one is one where they're going to do some maneuvering with the landing module that they plan on using for the next Artemis missions, and eventually they are going to land Artemis 4 on the moon down in that south polar region, do some exploration, and eventually the plan is to build a lunar base there on or around 2028 to 2030, somewhere in that range, to help us take the next steps into exploration of Mars. So how cool is that we are back into the space game in this way, and people are out exploring really cool things. So congratulations to all those folks who are a part of making this happen, the crew on the mission itself, and their families, friends, all the people that make this come to fruition. So the only other thing I'll talk about before the interview itself is, you may have noticed it's been a little bit since I put out an episode, just got busy with work, but I'm also going to experiment a bit with the release date. So starting with this episode, I'm going to start releasing Sunday mid-morning-ish, so the weekend listeners can take in the podcast. This is more just kind of testing out how the algorithm responds to when I post at different times. So that's the hope. We'll see how it pans out. All right, so into our interview now. And before I jump into that, a little bit about our guest. So Marcus Miller, who many may know as Prop Hat Cat, works as an air traffic controller and an aviation content creator. Through this content, he's trying to pull back the illusion of what happens behind the mic at air traffic control, specifically on the center side. He explains everything from routine pilot communications to high-stress situations, and how you can make clear and practical conversations, and he's pretty entertaining. So what makes his take really interesting is he's not just talking in theory here or reading a book. He does this job every day. So he's got a great perspective, and despite what one of those other podcasts may say, he's a pretty smart center controller. Whether you're a pilot, student, or someone who just wants to know what happens behind the scenes, he's going to talk all about the nuances of that gig. So with that, let's get into our interview with Marcus. Well, on this episode of the AeroExploration podcast, I'm joined by Marcus, who you might know from social media as Prop Hat Cat, who has been dropping all kinds of ATC knowledge on us for a little while now on short form media, and I've been learning a ton from you. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited myself. I've been really enjoying your content, and it's just so cool when I'm able to kind of bring that together and chat with people and learn about how they got here. So,
well, if there's one thing that I like about being an air traffic controller, it's talking. So happy to do it.
Awesome. So I'm going to start off with a question I ask a lot of people on the podcast, and that's, how did you first get interested in aviation?
You know, nobody in my family was in aviation. I loved airplanes growing up. I had an airplane birthday party at Waco Regional whenever I
Nice.
was like, 4 or 5, back when Colgan flew their propeller planes in there. I forgot what they were. That, I've always loved aviation, and I've always loved, flying and anything like that. Some of my best memories growing up is we'd go on trips, and I remember the vacation, but I remember the airplane rides and like the feeling of waking
Yes.
up at 6 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning to go to the airport. It's crack of dawn. You go there, you get in the plane, you get the sunrise. So that's always been a special part in my I guess history. And then as I got older, I got onto flight simulators and things like that. Microsoft Flight Simulator 10 was my first one that really kind of spurred my interest into more of like, the piloting side of things as opposed to just, riding in the back. And that was really, really cool. And the cool part about Flight Simulator 10 was there was a multiplayer, like an online multiplayer function as well. And so
Yes, there was.
I flew on there. I don't know if anybody remembers the Poop Group server, but that was the server that I used to fly into.
Okay.
It was based in Chicago O'Hare. I don't know. It was silly. But I would work the tower there sometimes just because, why not? Who wouldn't want to work Chicago O'Hare Tower? And so I worked there, and I met some people on there, and they're like, hey, there's this other thing called VATSIM, the Virtual Air Traffic Controller Simulation Network. You should try that. Okay, cool. That's around 8th or 9th grade. And so I started on there, worked my way up through the different ratings and type ratings. And, it's this 8th grader, 9th grader learning air traffic control phraseology and learning how airplanes, don't hit each other. And that was really, really cool. And I kind of stuck onto that aspect as opposed to the flying aspect. And then went to college, initially started getting a BFA in musical theater, realized the starving artist life really wasn't for me. So transferred to a CTI program, which is like a collegiate training initiative. It was a partnership between the FAA and some colleges to basically streamline or help you get into the academy or hopefully make it a little bit easier to get into the academy. And so did that, applied 5 years in a row, finally got selected, went to the academy, passed academy, got to choose Houston, went to center, and here we are. So that's kind of the short story of how I got into aviation and kind of where I am now. It's really cool to kind of see how things, all the way back from the Poop Group server to now kind of led to this point, which is really, really cool.
Yeah. So you said you applied 5 different times before you got into the academy?
Yeah.
That's a lot of perseverance to keep going after it.
Yeah. I applied every year that I was in college because you have to be older than 18.
Sure.
And then I graduated college. I got my CTI certificate. Then I applied the year after. Now it says 5 years in a row, but there's only like 1 hiring bid every year or 2 hiring bids a year.
Right.
So
right. Okay.
it's, 4 times, 5 times, as opposed to, just an open hiring bid. You get rejected. Yeah. Okay, let me try again. Get rejected. Let me try again. Finite time frame to actually apply to these things.
So talk to me a bit about like the hiring process itself, and how did you prepare yourself as you're starting the application process?
One of the interesting things about air traffic control hiring in it of itself is it's a lot of hurry up and wait. It's a lot of, we need all of this material right now, and now we won't talk to you for 3 months or 4 months. And then, those 3 months or 4 months go by, and they're like, okay, now we need you to go do this medical, and you have to have it done by Tuesday. And we're like, okay, all right. Then you go, and they're like, okay, we won't call you back for another 3 months. They have streamlined it. They've made the process shorter now, which is nice for the people who are applying now. But back whenever I did it, it was about a year from I got my temporary offer letter, or really applied to getting a firm offer letter, which basically says you are going to the academy. So all that to say, 5 years, yes, long time. But thinking back on it, if I would have gone to the academy when I was a freshman, I would not have been successsul.
Sure.
If I would have gone as a sophomore, I wouldn't have been successful. I went whenever I was supposed to go. And so that was nice. And, that allowed me those extra, to get a college degree and then, as a fallback, because you want to have a fallback. It's not guaranteed, right? Even once you get hired, it's still not guaranteed until you're certified, right? So just going in with that mentality, I guess, of you have to fight every day in order to get this job because it is a really cool job, but it's a very gate-kept job because it is so important, right?
Well, sure.
And
Absolutely.
so doing everything that you can beforehand, i.e., getting a degree if you wanted to get a degree. Don't just sit idly by waiting for an application process. There's always something that you can be doing. One, to either improve your resume, or two, to improve your personality, or to improve your work ethic, or to improve your X, Y, and Z, right? Having another job, just staying in the world of learning. A big problem that some of my classmates had is they were out of the higher education, or they were out of the learning atmosphere for so long that by whenever they went to the academy, they had forgotten how to study. They had forgotten how to be in the material and how to retain information, which is an important aspect of going to the academy, right?
I
Because
would
it is a
imagine so.
school, right? It's basically a college. It's a 4-month degree as opposed to a 4-year degree, right? And it's just a information overload, drinking from a fire hose, because you have to learn the stuff today because you don't have time to be lackadaisical and I can learn it tomorrow. No, you're learning more stuff tomorrow that
Yeah.
is building on the stuff that you're learning today. So it's important to stay up to date and to stay current with all of that stuff. Anyway, so that's one thing that going back, I was pretty good at it. Could I have been better before I applied? Probably. But I think being in the collegiate world for those 4 years plus one that I was teaching for my college actually really was beneficial for whenever I went to the academy. I was like, okay, I'm not just being thrown into the Shark Tank. I have a foundation of how to study. I have a foundation of how to, learn a concept, how to see a concept and then build on that concept. Because the academy is not training you how to be an air traffic controller. The academy is training you how the FAA wants you to think, and can you think that way? And can you learn this big rule book? Can you learn these concepts and then apply those concepts in scenarios that they have determined, showcase whether you will be a good air traffic controller or a bad air traffic controller? And obviously, you want to do the best that you can there to get the job, right?
Yeah.
And so that's hard for some people, and it's hard to say, okay, in this lesson we're learning concept A. Here's how to do a handoff. In this lesson we're learning concept B. Here's how to do a point out. In this lesson we're learning, how to hand off to a high altitude sector. Okay, that's a little bit of concept A, but it's a new concept, right? And then the evaluation is going to be, okay, a little bit of concept A, a little bit of concept B, a little bit of concept C. And now you have to create a new concept based on those things, right? Okay, is it a handoff to the high altitude sector, or is it a point out and then request control? Or is it just a handoff, or is it just a point out? And of course, all of those are technical terms that air traffic controllers have to know, that you learn at the academy. But if you've watched some of my videos, you should know what they mean, because I try and define them. And that's really what I'm trying to do here, right? I'm trying to demystify the air traffic control side of things so that there's less, I don't know, frustration or animosity or unknown stuff from the pilot side, so that they can be better participants of the NAS because they know what's going on. They're clued into the other half of the picture, right? Because their jobs are very separate. The pilot is flying the plane, controllers are controlling the plane. The only common factor is the plane. Everything else is completely separate. We're doing a bunch of data input entry, or we're doing, visual separation and other stuff. And you're over here. Okay, here's my fuel calculations. Here's my weight and balance. Here's my center of gravity and all that stuff. We don't know any of that stuff. And you probably don't know what we're doing. So being able to clue in the other side has been really beneficial. And there's such a content gap, I think, of this material. It kind of makes it nice because I'm kind of the only person doing this right now, because I'm either really dumb, because I am probably dumb to be trying to explain this stuff. But also, it's such a mountain to try to do, because trying to explain concept A, trying to explain a handoff, is difficult to explain it in normal everyday English, right? To one, for a pilot to understand. But if you want to grow on social media, you're not just talking to pilots. You're not just talking to, other controllers. You're talking to the general public. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Any news story about air traffic control is wrong. Any news story about aviation is generally wrong. They have their aviation experts talking, but they don't know what they're talking about, because they're trying to explain it in a way that, a fifth grader would understand it. And sometimes it's easier just to say, this is kind of what's happening, as opposed to saying, this is actually
Right.
what's happening.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, so that's the academy. It's learning concepts, and it's being able to apply the concepts, I guess, if I can go away from the question and then come back to the question.
You totally can. This is my podcast, and you're a guest, and you can do whatever you want.
Hey, there you go. Awesome.
That's the rules.
That's
I should have
awesome.
made that clear at the start. You can do whatever you want, within reason.
Yeah.
So you talked a bit about the training process. So I might just skip past that because I think you kind of covered it.
I mean, whenever the FAA has an open hiring bid, they'll put out how to apply.
Okay.
I can say how to apply. They change it a little bit every single time. So what I say here could be changed the next time that they have an application bid.
Sure.
General idea is, older than 18. I think now it's a year of work experience, a year of college, or a combination of the two. You have to read, write, and understand English. You have to pass a medical security background check. You have to pass the ATSA, which is the Air Traffic Skills Assessment, or something like that. And so they'll tell you. It's very black and white. It's very easy once the application process is open, because they tell you exactly what to do. I would say to your listeners who are interested in applying, go ahead and create a USA Jobs account. That's basically how the federal government hires people.
Sure.
That's like their main HR. It's like the LinkedIn of the USA Jobs, right, or of the government. So make an account and input your resume into their resume builder, because you get like extra points if you use their functionality as opposed to just uploading it originally, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe not extra points, but it parses it faster or parses it easier, and it likes that. That's all I was told whenever I was applying. And it worked, I guess, for me after 5 times.
Well, here you are.
And here we are. So that's what I would say. If you got some downtime, go ahead and put it in there. Keep it up to date. There hasn't been a job announcement this year yet. And I was told there was supposed to be one in January, but then the government shut down. So then that was kind of postponed. Through the grapevine, don't quote me on this, but I'm hearing mumblings of a open vacancy bid for off the street hires in July-ish during Oshkosh.
Oh, okay.
The FAA is going to have a hiring booth there, supposedly, and you can apply there, or you can apply, at home. And
Nice.
so that's if you're interested in applying, I would aim for a July application. Again, don't quote me on that, but if it happens, cool. If not, whatever. It's like saying light chop whenever you check on, It's like, if there's light chop, okay, they told us about it. But if there's not, okay, it's cool, it's smooth. And then there's not, right? Oh, that's a secret.
So, you are a center controller, and I know that a podcast that kind of pokes at center controllers, but I'm glad to have you. So
I actually haven't been on that one. I would like to be on that one.
I had been on it.
No, that was just me
they
reacting
talked-
to the audio.
Okay.
Yeah, we were just
Talked
all wearing
about it.
blue. It looked like I was on it. I was
Gotcha.
really good at green screen.
Ooh, you did a really good job.
No, it would be really, really cool. I've listened to them, since since the whole application process, I'm sure, because, you look for air traffic control podcast, and theirs is probably the first one that pops up, right?
I think aviation podcast period is the first one that pops up. So,
and so that was really cool to hear. I listen to them every week, and so I'm like, hold on, what are they talking about? They're about to be nice to a center controller. What is this? Wait, is this about me? Hold on. What? That's so cool.
Did you have like a little moment of just surreal, like, what is happening right now?
Yeah, it's like, Mom, I've made it, like, this is awesome. But yeah, it's so cool. And it's cool, the like doors that have opened, the connections that have been made with this, like, there is a reason that my stuff is doing okay. It's because nobody else has done it. One. Two, I think I'm somewhat personable, so people feel like they can ask me things, which is the thing that I'm trying to do, right?
Yeah.
That's why I have a face account. That's why I am using my real name. I don't have to do that, but I'm doing it because I'm trying to humanize air traffic control. I'm trying to say, hey, we're not just robots behind here. We're people just like you and me. Here's some misconceptions or here's some mystery. Let's unmask it. Let's solve it, right? So that's kind of why I'm doing that, which is kind of fun. But yeah, just being there and actually having people like respond overall positively to this stuff is really cool, and it's kind of validating somewhat, because I'm not just sitting alone in my apartment, talking to myself in front of my cats. It's like, oh, people actually find this stuff somewhat valuable or interesting, which is kind of cool.
They sure do. I mean, that's why we're here. I find it interesting. So, is there a point in training where you know what direction you're going to go, or what does that look like for how you go down which path?
So when you apply to the FAA, there's 5 different hiring tracks, and I've talked about these before. Again, if you want to do some research about that, I can quickly go over those if you'd like me to. But it's basically off the street, which means you have no air traffic control experience whatsoever. There's CTI, which is you have, a 2-year college degree that says that I did the CTI program. You have what's called an enhanced CTI, which is a new thing that the FAA has put out, which basically says, so CTI program, just normal CTI, you still have to go to the academy in Oklahoma. Enhanced CTI is you do all of the academy training at your college. You do your evaluation at your college. If you pass at your college, then you go directly to a federal facility to work. So that's the difference between CTI and eCTI. And there's a tower, a TRACON, and a center version of eCTI. I don't know if you actually get to choose which one you go to, or if you're put in one of those. I would imagine you get to choose because you're kind of paying for it, right? It's like a pay to play, pay to win. So maybe you can choose if you go down that way. If you do off the street, you don't really get a choice. They basically say, here's your firm offer letter. Congratulations, you're going the tower track, or you're going the center track, or you're going the TRACON track. You can ask to change. I asked to change. Originally, I was center, and I was like, can I go tower? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll go center,
Right.
It just depends on how full the classes are, if there's other class dates and things like that. So it's not impossible, but there either have to be like extenuating circumstances, like I'm in a wedding this week and I can't do it. Can I change to another class? And if I can change, is there a tower class that I can change into or whatever, right? So there's 3 ways. The 4th way is military. You're a military controller. You have 52 weeks of military control experience, and then you get out of the military and you can basically direct hire to a facility.
Okay.
Either a tower or a TRACON, because military doesn't do centers. And then there's another company called Advanced ATC, or if somehow you get a control tower operator certificate. Advanced ATC is basically a college, but it's only for tower. And you get a control tower operator certificate, and that allows you to work for their towers that they have. So there's like Midwest ATC and some other, contract tower companies. You work for them for 52 weeks, and then you apply to the previous experience bid, and then you can go to a FAA facility based on that 52 weeks of experience.
Gotcha.
So those are kind of the 5 ways to choose. And tower, advanced ATC, you're basically going tower, military, tower, or TRACON. And then for off the street is really the one that they would just put you where they need you, pretty much.
Needs of the FAA.
Needs of the FAA. Same thing whenever actually they've changed it. Whenever you graduate the academy, it used to be, so we had 9 people in my class graduate out of 12, which is pretty good. And they basically have a list at the end. So there's 9 facilities that you can choose from. And so it's like Houston, Oakland, Boston, Cleveland, Miami, blah, blah, blah. And depending on how well you did in class, you get to pick first, second, third off the list.
Okay.
So I was number 2 in class, so I got to pick second. technically I was number one because my roommate chose to go to Alaska. So I don't count him as number one. So I was number one, chose Houston. No, he's from Alaska, so he just went home. But
That makes sense.
that's how it was. Now, if there is the there's like a trainee to certified controller ratio, and if that ratio allows for that facility to accept trainees, I think it's like the ratio is like 90% or 80% or something. Less than that, they can accept trainees.
Okay.
You can choose to go there. So there's two spots basically for every facility. If they're within that, 80 or 90%. I don't actually know if that's what it is, but some percentage. And if it's open, you get to go, right? But if two people above you in class chose to go there, then you wouldn't be able to go there because there's only 2 spots. So that's kind of nice because, the old way, you're kind of sent wherever is on your list, right? I'm from Texas. I would have liked Fort Worth. I'm happy with Houston. But those 2 spots, those 2 facilities could not have been on the list. And then I would have had to go somewhere else, right?
Gotcha.
Now, if Fort Worth or if Houston's on the list, you're pretty much guaranteed to go there unless somebody else chooses to go there. So that's kind of nice. It's supposed to cut down on you get certified and you immediately transfer somewhere because you want to go home, right? And it also helps whenever you're in training and you have a support system now of like your family or your friends, and then you're not just in a total new city, right? So those trainees are now just trickling in because they made that change into 2023, I think. So those guys are just now getting certified. So we'll see if they actually stay, but we'll see what happens.
So you used a word that I wanted to bring up, being certified. So once you go down this path of, for you, you're going the center route. So what does it take for you to get certified in the center?
So in the center, I like to say we work in a dark windowless environment talking to voices in our head, right? And we have my area has 5 sectors. So how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Houston Center is very big. That's where I work. It goes from Pensacola to El Paso and then from Waco down to Brownsville. Very big airspace. One controller is not working that whole thing. So they divide it up into specialties. And those specialties are then subdivided into sectors. So there are 7 specialties in Houston. And then my specialty is the one that I'm assigned whenever I get to Houston Center. So graduate academy, go to Houston. They're like, congratulations, you're going to Lake Charles. Okay, cool. So you go to Lake Charles, you learn all the maps and the diagrams and frequencies and LOAs and SOPs upstairs. The training part of training. Training part of training. The theoretical part of training, I guess, is the better way to say.
Okay.
And then you go down to the floor and you train on what's called the D side, which is the radar associate position. So if you think about a radar scope, you have the person sitting in front of the radar scope. They're called the R side. And they're responsible for talking to the airplanes and issuing control instructions. Next to them, there's a little computer, and that's it's like the electronic flight strips, but you can also do a bunch of other stuff on that computer. And basically, the D side is working to help the R side manage the flight strips and manage coordination and basically do everything except give control instructions to the airplanes.
Okay.
So you have to learn the D side for every sector that's within your specialty. So I have 5 sectors in my airspace. I have to learn all 5 D sides. First, I learn the D sides. I get certified on the D sides. I go back upstairs for R side training. So then you learn the R side stuff. You go back onto the floor. You do the R side stuff. You do 5 sectors of R sides, and then you get certified. How that looks in pay raise wise is your first 2 D. So you graduate academy. You are academy graduate. That is your pay raise. You go to your facility. You don't get another pay raise until you get your first 2 D sides. Then you get D1. And that's a percentage pay raise, right? Then you get the rest of your D sides. That's D2. And you go back upstairs. You learn the R side stuff. You go back to the floor. You get your first 2 R sides, D3. And then the remaining R sides gets you certified professional controller or CPC. Okay. So that's kind of the pay raise. At a tower, if it's only a tower, I think clearance, delivery, and ground are like D2, and then tower or local would be CPC. So like you kind of jump a few steps.
Gotcha.
If it's a tower and a TRACON, like an up-down facility, I believe it's like clearance, delivery, ground for D1, tower for D2. You learn the radar stuff, you go to the radar floor, you get your first radar sector, 2 radar sectors, D3, and then the rest of the radars, you get CPC. So it just depends on the facility that you're at.
So that whole process we're talking about, how long does that take to go through those different steps?
Depends on the facility.
Okay.
For a tower, you're looking 6 months to 8 months to be fully certified if it's just a tower. It depends on the tower, though. Chicago Midway is only a tower, but it's very complicated. Hobby is only a tower. Bush is only a tower. An up-down facility like Charles, Lafayette, where you're working tower and radar, it could be, 8 months to a year and a half. Just depends on how quickly you pick up the material as well, right? Everybody's going to be slightly different. In the center, just depends on the center, right? In Houston, our checkout time is about 2.5 years to go from academy graduate to CPC. In New York Center, I think it's like 4.5 to 5 to 6.
Wow.
Which is a long time, right?
That's
and
a
I think
long time.
their washout rate is 44%, which
Wow.
is crazy. Whereas Houston, I think, is like 87% now, which is,
Okay.
lower than I think I was expecting. Still pretty good. But yeah, it just depends on the facility, and that's why I think that support system is so important for these new trainees, right? Normally, New York, Oakland were like the last on the list. And so the bottom of the class was forced to go to New York or Oakland. They still passed. They're still trainees, but you're forced to go to live in New York. You're forced to go to live in Oakland, which is high cost of living. One,
Mhm.
you probably don't know anybody there. Two, New York takes a very particular type of person to want to live there, one. And, it's a lot. You're living on Long Island. You're not even living like near Manhattan.
Right.
Oakland, I was told by somebody who transferred from Houston, I don't know how accurate this is, but Oakland, they had trainees working, 8-hour days, but then 2 hours of credit on the end of their day, because on Friday they could use the 8 hours of credit they've accumulated to then have another job over the weekend. So they could work Friday, Saturday, Sunday to actually pay to live in the Bay Area, right?
Wow.
They had certain shifts in Oakland to beat the morning traffic. I think you could get there like 3:30 in the morning because the traffic started at like 4:30 or 5, and if you didn't get there at 3:30, you're stuck in traffic for 2.5 hours, 3 hours,
That sounds awful.
It sounds awful. So the washout rate, is low, but also washout rate takes into account people who just didn't finish training. So you could have gotten your first D-sides. And once you get your first D-sides, you can what's called nest, which is basically say, hey, this isn't working for me. I want to go to like a low-level tower. I'm going to go there for a little bit. I'm going to get certified there, and then maybe I'll transfer somewhere else. So you're still not out of the system. You're not like fired as a controller, which is kind of nice. It's a little safety net.
Mm-hmm.
But they account for those nest people as training failures. 44% yes, but that may not necessarily be because they didn't just finish training. They didn't become a CPC at New York Center. It's not to say that they aren't going to become a CPC somewhere else, right? Which is kind of reassuring, I think, because you're not just done, which is nice. And I mean, by the time you graduated academy, the FAA's already like spent over $1 million in your training, with instructors and equipment and housing and food and all that stuff. So they don't just want to get rid of you, right? Because you've passed academy. You can say that you theoretically can do this job. You've shown a little bit of that, and they want you to be successful because they need you to be successful, right? Sometimes it's just, that the cards that you're dealt, going to New York, going to Oakland, it's difficult. Now, if people are from Oakland, if people are from New York, it's a little bit easier for them, right? Because they have that support system. They know what they're getting into. So they can, focus on the controlling aspect as opposed to the how am I going to feed myself aspect, right?
I'd imagine the controlling is stressful enough without worrying about where you're going to get your next ramen noodles. So.
If that.
We talked a little bit about this, but I think that we've also discussed it. Like people see air traffic control on the movies or TV. They think it's a tower, right? Everyone's talking to me from a tower. So you've talked a bit about the role of the center as far as the different sectors and working your way through that. What, in your opinion, is like the big differences between a center and a tower?
Big difference between a center and a tower.
Well, other than the windows, I do know that part.
The windows, yes. They're two entirely different jobs. Yes, we're both air traffic controllers, but we have a total different set of skills. I can't just go tomorrow and be like, I want to work Bush Tower. Oh, I'm an air traffic controller. Yeah, but you don't know anything about their rule set. You don't know anything about what is a runway. I don't know what a runway is as a center controller. I don't ever say clear for takeoff. I don't say clear to land. I don't know what any of those are. I don't know how to give a taxi instruction, because that's not our responsibility. That's not our job. That's a tower controller's job. I like to think of it as like different doctor specialties, right? So the center is the brain surgeon. The tower is the heart surgeon. The trachon is the foot specialist or whatever. I don't know. They're going to laugh at that maybe, or get really mad at me.
Those are really the extremes. There's no in between.
Yeah, there's no in between. So if I wanted to heart surgery on somebody, I'm a brain surgeon. I don't know how to do that. I'm a doctor. My goal is to keep the patient alive, but I don't know how to do that job. So I would have to retrain in order to do that job. So I think that's the big difference, right? The tower controllers do tower controller stuff. The center controllers do center controller stuff. The trachon controllers do trachon controller stuff. And unfortunately, for the majority of people, the tower is the most visible world of air traffic control. And so whenever somebody says, oh, what airport do you work at? Or what tower do you work at? They just don't know that there's two other types of controllers, And so you're like, okay, do I want to have this conversation and educate this person? Or do I just say, yeah, I work in the tower, or I work at Bush, I don't know. That's kind of the two extremes there, I guess. But yeah, just the training is completely different. The work is different, and that's, I think, part of the cool part about this job is, if I ever wanted to go to a tower, I could apply to go to a tower. I could go to a tower, I get certified to the tower, and then I could be a tower controller. It's possible to change tracks. Sometimes it's more difficult than others, but it is possible. Same thing for a center or a tower person to come to the center.
So for the tower controllers that we know or have listened to, is it infinitely harder to go from the tower to the center? It's super difficult to make that transition because you guys are way smarter. Yeah, I heard you say you're brain surgeons, so I want to make sure that I relay that message to somebody else if and when he listens to this.
Yes. It's just different. I don't know how else to describe it, right? You can be running a very complicated squeeze play with like 20 people in the pattern, and you're having to do Apache helicopter landings and Chinook helicopter landings, and somehow there's a penguin waddling on the runway, and you're like, I don't know what's going on. And that can be really, really complicated, right? Whereas in the center, we could just be dealing with one airplane or two airplanes that are just flying back and forth because it's a slow period. The tower would be more complicated. But sometimes, if it's just airline 123 clear for takeoff, airline 123 clear for takeoff, airline 123 clear for takeoff, which all of these like level 12s are very proceduralized in order to do that. Now, sure, it can be complicated as well. Think of O'Hare taxi instructions and all that crap. But, my airspace on a weather reroute day, we're kind of the south part of the Gulf. So my airspace extends into the water. So when you get these really long lines of weather going from Brownsville to Chicago, everybody on the east side of the weather wants to go south, and everybody on the west side of the weather wants to go south, and they all meet in my airspace. And those days can be very, very, very complicated because everybody wants to climb, everybody wants to descend, everybody wants to deviate around. And there's just so little airspace because you're literally stuck between not going more than 50 miles off the coast for most of these aircraft that don't have life jackets or life preservers or whatever, and the big line of weather that's right in front of them. And so those days, very, very complicated, very, very complex. And those days are, infinitely more difficult than, a day-to-day tower. I'm just going to say it. Granted, I've never worked in a tower, so I don't know if I can actually say that. But in my opinion, infinitely more difficult. I mean, just the amount of frequencies that we have to know compared to a tower. You know, it's two separate jobs. They both can be difficult in their own rights. I think it's unfair to put one against the other, like which one's better. But the center's more difficult.
It's all in good fun.
In my opinion, yes.
So we've alluded to that you have taken your knowledge to the vast webs of the internet to try to share. How did you start down this path of like, I want to share what it is that I do, and like, what were the goals as you said about that? Or did you have any? And just kind of like, let's see how this goes.
I was at Disney World with one of my friends, and I was like, you know, I really want to be like an influencer. I think that'd be really cool. I think I'd be really good at that. And she was like, okay, cool. What do you want to influence? I'm like, damn, you're right. I got to find something that I want to influence, you know? Like, oh, that's a great question, you know? And so the more I thought about it, NACA does this thing at Oshkosh every year where they basically do like pilot outreach. And I had gone the past 3 years. And I really, really found that I enjoyed that aspect of going with NACA to Oshkosh. We'd wear this like yellow vest. It's like, ask me anything. I'm a controller. I wore a little propeller hat because I thought it was less intimidating. That's where I get the little propeller hat for the prop hat cat. And I really, really, really enjoyed that aspect of it, having pilots come up and ask questions and hopefully like demystify what's going on in kind of an official setting. And so I'm like, okay, what if I just start doing little tidbits of, you know, this is what we're thinking, or these are some stereotypes that I see, or this is what I find annoying, or this is what I find really nice whenever a pilot does, you know, and just started making a video. And then people were like, oh, that's interesting. Here's a question. Okay, well, let me respond to that question. Oh, that's cool. Well, let me ask this question. Okay, well, let me respond to that question. So it kind of has a snowball effect of, you know, you make something, and then if you don't, you know, if you take the time to actually understand why they're asking the question and to do the research to answer the question, then people will come back and be like, wow, this guy actually kind of knows what he's talking about, which is kind of nice. Now, of course, you're going to have some trolls who are like, this guy doesn't know anything. I'm like, okay, whatever. It is what it is. Again, it's all my opinion. I'm doing my best that I can, but I don't know everything, right? I don't know taxi instructions. I don't know takeoff clearances or whatever. But the connections that I've made with doing this, I know a lot of people who work in towers, who work in TRACONs, who work for airlines, who work for big box companies, right? So if I have questions specific to those, I can reach out to those people and have people who actually do that answer them. Or, you know, just do the research. Yeah. So just the connections that I've made with this social media thing has been really, really cool. And, you know, you were just on with Nick from the in command, right? You just did a in command with him. So he's been a great resource, with FSDO related questions or with questions about like regulations, because air traffic control, we know very little about the actual CFRs. We know our rulebook, which is the 7110.65, which works in conjunction with the CFRs. But we just know that rulebook. We're not pilots. We don't learn the pilot rulebook. Like, that's for pilots. So that can create a time where we say something that we want you to do that's within the scope of the letter of our rulebook, but it may not be something that you can do based on this rulebook, right? And so you knowing what you were supposed to do to then say, hey, I'm unable that because of this, allows us to be like, oh, okay, learning opportunity, don't do that again, right? Which is good. And so being able to have Nick on here to kind of bounce, you know, regulation related questions, because I don't know much about the CFRs, has been really beneficial as well. Excuse me.
And, you know, myself personally, I found like, especially, I don't know if it's content creation in general or not, or if it's just aviation in general, or if it's aviation content creation. I don't know. But I've found that like the community involved with that is so collaborative. Like, it's not like, oh, you're trying to steal my views, or you're trying to do this or that. Like, everyone is super helpful and super collaborative. I'm like, hey, I did this and this worked well for me, or hey, did you think about doing this if you went? Like I got like a ton of tips about how to navigate Oshkosh from a content creation standpoint. So like it's so collaborative, and I love that about this space.
And I think that's one of the cool parts about, the pilot side of it, the pilot content creation side, is because everybody flies. It's very rare that you get two content creators that are flying the same exact airplane, the same exact route. They both have their separate things,
Yep.
This is this type of model. This is this type of model. Okay. And there's that niche for those people. And then I look at air traffic control niche kind of relates to all of those, which is really cool. And that's one of the cool parts about Oshkosh as well. There's so many people there in, the vendors and everything who are trying to sell pilots things, right? We're trying to sell you this new seatbelt. We're trying to sell you this hat. We're trying to sell you this, oxygen mask for your dog. The air traffic controller, the NATCA booth there is just there saying like, hey, here's a service that's free pretty much. I mean, you've already paid for it with your taxes and whatnot. Use it. This is the stuff that you can do with air traffic control. So I think it's cool. It's kind of a different mentality going to a place like that, because then you can really just, you kind of break down that barrier of, I'm just walking through the thing, and you got the row barkers, the carnival barkers, like, hey, come try this new thing. It's like people walk by the NATCA booth and they like come in just by themselves, right? They want to be there, as opposed to, I'm trying to sell you something, like, here you go. We got coffee and donuts, like, here, have some free stuff. So I think that's interesting. And that kind of mentality and that kind of motive, I think permeates the Prop Hat Cat stuff too, because, I don't charge for any of this stuff. One, I can't, because that would be like an aviation related job. And the FAA is very teeter-totter about working another job within aviation. So it's not necessarily like, I don't charge anything for all this stuff. Again, it's only my opinions. I'm basically doing this as a passion project, not a separate job, which is nice. But I think that also allows for the maximum exposure, because there's nothing behind a paywall. There's nothing behind a subscription. There's nothing behind whatever.
Yeah.
Would it be cool to have a subscription? Yeah, I've been thinking about it. But I'm like, okay, would it be ATC related, or would it just be like a day in the life? Or like, here's a video of my cat, or here's some stuff like that, for people who enjoy the content and who want to support. I have a little shop and whatever, but that's not, an air traffic controller making stickers. That is Marcus, who is making stickers, who is also an air traffic controller, right? It's this fine line of teeter-tottering. And, it's not like, if you buy this sticker, you will get a shortcut. We're not doing that. It's hey, you find this interesting? You want to buy some stickers because they're funny? Here you go. It's little stuff like that. But so I think that's been one of the big learning curves. I've only been doing this for about a year, like actually like posting stuff for a year, and I learn every single day, like new things, or, oh, maybe I don't do that again, or, oh, this guy was talking and he actually knows what he's talking about, or, oh, this guy's commenting and he really doesn't know what he's talking about, but okay. And I'm 100% willing to say I'm wrong. And here's, if you can prove it, right? Where in the regulation does it say that? Where in the whatever does it say that? And I've kind of taken that into my real world as well. It's like somebody tells me to do something. I'm like, can we do that? Well, we just have to. We've always done it. Okay, where does it say that though? Like,
well, that's how we've always done it.
But that's how we've always done it. I was trained to do it that way. My trainer was trained to do it that way. Okay, but where does it say that, right? And I think that's a great question just to ask, just in general, in flight training and air traffic controller training. Once you're an airline pilot or a corporate pilot or a GA pilot or a survey pilot or a fully certified CPC, where does it say that? Where's the basis for this understanding? What is the basis for this understanding? Is it still valid? Was this something that they did in the 90s and then they actually have updated the 0.65, but nobody told anybody? Okay. Because that happens sometimes. So yeah, that's been my journey recently is, where does it say that? And that's a fun thing to respond to people like that. It's like, well, this blah blah blah. Okay, where does it say that? Oh, it's from an article online that it's from like the IFR Flying Magazine website.
Right.
Okay, cool. But is there a regulation? Is there something like, will they pull up this article in a court of law if something happens? Right?
Exactly. How regulatory is that article?
How regulatory is an IFR Flying Magazine? I don't know.
It's not.
I don't know.
Quick hint, it's not.
Yeah. But I mean, there are some good articles out there about stuff, and that leads you to the citations of where they found their information, and then you can find the actual stuff there, the meat and potatoes of the law or whatever. And so I think that's been a really cool part about doing this as well, is it's really gotten me into the regulations and into the meat and potatoes of the aviation industry as a whole, to understand why we do things. Because like I said, we just do things because it's how we've always done it. But if you can explain why and take the time to research why and then showcase it in a 3-minute or less video in a way that's easy to understand, somewhat personable, somewhat funny, then people enjoy that. And I think that's kind of the secret sauce of the Prop Hat Cat stuff, more or less, because I do take the time to try and understand this stuff, because I'm the one that's crazy enough to try and do this right now, at least for the air traffic control side. And there's a few other air traffic control influencers as well. Lima Sierra, DO Aviation, A Witty talks a lot about like the command center stuff, but we all have our little niche, right? And so being able to kind of fill in the gaps with everybody has been pretty cool, and I've really enjoyed doing it. It's a lot of work, but I think it's beneficial, and I think that it makes me a better controller. And hopefully, if one pilot listens or understands, or has a little bit less frustration about what's going on the other side of the microphone, it's worth it.
So I have a question for you about your the content creation portion of it. So I'm sure that you come up with a number of topics or ideas or questions. What does your process look like for when you sit down and actually start recording these? Are you just like, I have 6 of these I'm going to do today, or how do you do that for you, or whenever you feel like it?
It's a lot of whenever I feel like it.
Okay.
I have a form on my link tree that's Ask Prop Hat Cat a Question. So
Okay.
I'll peruse that. I'll be like, okay, that's a great question, but that's going to be a lot of research. Maybe not today, push down, find something else. Well, that's a little bit easier. Okay, let's focus on that. Or a TikTok question response. I really don't like Instagram's comment thing, because on TikTok you can save a comment and then you can reply to the comment later. On Instagram, you can't do that. You just have to reply to it right then, which is kind of frustrating if you want to do research, right? And then you forget it and then you lose it and you're like, crap, where did it go? So if you want a question answered, use the forum, because then that goes to my email and I can keep everything nice and organized, or ask it on TikTok. Anyway, so find a thing. Okay, there it is. Okay, so let's say we want to talk about vacating altitudes. That was the video I just put out. Okay, what is the question? Is it required to report vacating an altitude? All right. Is it required? Subtext: is there a regulation that I am violating if I do not report vacating an altitude? The video I put out today is actually like the 4th iteration of my is it required to report vacating an altitude? And every time I put it out, people are like, well, what about 91-183? Or what about the AIM 5-3-3? So I started out with just like my opinion of it. And then it's grown into, okay, well, here's the regulations and here's the stuff that actually is supporting my thesis of air traffic control really doesn't care, in this situation. And so kind of go through there, go to Google. All the stuff that I do is Googleable pretty much. And, here's a secret. If you want the answer to a question, you can probably find it on Google. You can ask me if you want, but it can probably also be found on Google, because realistically, that's all I'm doing. I'm just Googling it. And then okay, here's a little bit of my air traffic control flair to the answer,
Well, I was going to say, I think it's more than just Googling it, because I mean, it's one thing to Google something and read it and go, I think this is what it means. But you've also got the knowledge and experience of doing the job to be like, here's like from my perspective of all of my vast experience, here's what this actually means versus the words that you just read, and you're coming up with your own conclusions.
Yeah. So Googling it is a very simplified method of explaining it.
I'm trying to give you a compliment.
You caught me. You caught me. Okay. I do a lot of research on this. I do a lot of research. You take all that information and you're like, okay, here's what my research has found. If it's something about regulations, ask Nick, hey, is there something on the FSDO side, if they don't report vacating in altitude, would you do a certificate action on them, right? Are you going to do, the recurrent training or whatever the thing is, right? Compliance policy. So you kind of spread out a few little feelers as well to be like, what would the FISD, because realistically, is it required? Am I in violation of a regulation? Well, the people who would be determining that are the FSDO people. And so asking a FSDO person for their opinion is, the smart thing to do, I would think, because they're the people who actually care about this question, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do that. And then once you get all that stuff, I'm like, okay, I get my little tripod out, get my little microphone on, and then I just, kind of make it up. I'm not a big scripter. I don't like scripting things. I like the little, record on TikTok, thought at a time kind of mentality. Like, okay, here's the overarching story that I want to say, and here are the points that I want to make. And then I have a general idea of how I'm going to make those points. So let's just start talking. And if it doesn't sound good, we'll just delete it and do it again. Which, some people have asked, well, why haven't you made like YouTube long form content? I'm like, well, that requires like scripting, and that requires
because it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, right? And the short form stuff is so much quicker and so much easier. So yeah, then I make that. I watch it. I'm like, yes, this looks pretty good. And then I put on the little captions, put on my little disclaimer, come up with a fun little title, and then shoot it off into the ether web. I'll normally post it on TikTok for like a day, and see what the comments are and responses are there, because TikTok is generally pretty nice when it comes to comment responses. Before
exactly
I posted
the opposite.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, so that's before I put it on Instagram and Facebook, because I get eviscerated in the Facebook comments sometimes.
No kidding.
So it's like, oh. So I do there. I'm like, okay, what comments can I like preemptively think people are going to ask? And then can I pin a comment? Because that's one thing that you can do on Instagram and Facebook is you can pin a comment.
Right.
Where you can't do that on TikTok. So you can kind of head off some follow-up questions that a bunch of people may have initially. So yeah, that's kind of the method. And like, okay, do I want to make another one today? Cool. Normally I record, I edit, and then I post like day of, like within 10 minutes of each other. I don't really do drafts. I don't really do anything like that, because I think that's the air traffic controller mindset, right? You don't want to wait to do something until it's too late, right? If we can descend the airplane now, just descend the airplane now, right? You don't have to wait a little bit longer, because then you may forget, then there may be new traffic and now you can't descend them. So just do it. That's a pretty big air traffic controller trait, actually. It's finding what you need to do in your scan, doing it, scan. Okay, find something else, do it, scan, find something else, do it. And then you're just actively doing that your whole shift, basically. So same thing in content creation. Make the thing, finish the thing, complete the thing, post the thing. Okay, make a new thing, finish the thing, complete the thing, post the thing. And I'm just now thinking about that. And that's how it works for me. For Oshkosh last year, I kind of had an idea of like, I'm going to go on the ChatGPT and I'm going to have it like come up with some ideas for like, what should I be posting every day? And what's like a rundown, and how can I, what's my posting schedule going to be like? And, that just went out the window the first day, because there's so many things to talk about that just trying to like segment it into different things is just not possible. But I think being able to record on the fly or being able to record on the whim is kind of freeing as well, because you're like, okay, maybe I don't record something today. Okay, cool. And I think that helps with burnout as well. I mean, whenever I first started, I was doing 3, 4, 5 videos a day. And that's a lot. And then you quickly start to realize, I'm running out of things to talk about. And people are responding in comments, but they're also asking the same questions that I've already made videos on. So it's okay. Do you make a new video, or do you just, tag them in the other video that you've made? Well, it was like my vacating altitude video. Could I update the video? Okay, I can. Let's make a new video. But yeah, and I really haven't, I probably should do here's some content creation classes. Here's how to do better angles, and here's how to do better stuff, right? It's really just kind of making it up as I go along. But
yeah,
it's fun. That's part of the learning experience.
I found though that sometimes, so to your Oshkosh point, I sat down and I had a plan, right? Like you said, it out the window day one. I tried to be very intentional. All right, here's how many interviews I'm going to do per day. And that's it. No more than that. And then things would pop up, an opportunity would pop up because I wanted to see some forums. And one of my co-hosts on our other podcast, in the middle of a forum, she's like, can you be over here in 10 minutes? We have so-and-so. You have to get over here. I guess I'm going over here. So, 15 interviews in a week is a lot.
That's a lot.
To be, especially running all over those grounds. And my plan went right out the window. So, yeah, it's just interesting to see how different content creators within the same space are doing different things, but still finding their way and finding their enjoyment out of it. So,
and there's it's difficult with air traffic control stuff because a lot of it is very dry and a lot of it is very climb and maintain, descend and maintain, turn left, turn right. It's very, very boring. And so finding ways to make it interesting, finding a hook is so difficult. With an airplane, here's an airplane. Cool, that's a hook. Right? Oh, here's some oil falling out of the airplane. Okay, that's a hook, right? Air traffic control, it's let's talk about vacating altitudes. It's
yay.
How do we get somebody's attention in the first 2 seconds of this? It's so complicated. Yeah, and then everything that I say is underneath a microscope as well, right? There's things that I can talk about, things I can't talk about, which
right.
Is fine. That's the nature of the beast.
Mm-hmm.
But this is also difficult because somebody complains about your podcast. Okay, they just complain in the chat. Okay, move on. You forget about it in two weeks. If somebody doesn't like something that I say, they turn me into my job. They're like, I didn't like how they were talking about somebody on this because I was yelled at by a tower controller in the 70s and I hate all air traffic controllers. So I'm going to turn this guy in because he's speaking things that make sense and I don't like that. It makes me very defensive, and they turn it in. And the way that the anonymous hotline tip works with the FAA is they have to investigate that stuff. And so you sit down in a room and you talk about, hey, this is what the complaint was. Here's the video. Let's watch the video, And then the video, the hook is always X, Y, and Z is not doing any shortcuts for the next 20 years. It's okay, that's a hook. It doesn't it's just there to get the attention. So you have to be very, very mindful of the stuff that you say. That's also why there's not a lot of air traffic controller content creators because everything that you do is under a microscope. You can't say anything that's derogatory or defamatory towards the FAA, which is fine. That's not the type of, media that I'm trying to do anyway. I'm trying to help pilots by being more personable and by making air traffic control less scary. So hopefully they use the system that's there to help them stay safe. Right. And so it's really frustrating when people turn me in because I'm like, you're missing the point of this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Just because you didn't like this one thing that I said, right? Say it in the comments. Let's have a discussion there. You don't have to bring my job into it,
Right.
But that's one of the hard parts about having, a face account. You're putting yourself out there to be critiqued or to be judged or to be, investigated, quote unquote, because I think it's important. And I think that having that connection is valuable. And I think that it ultimately will help.
Are there other things that you're looking to do in the space of content creation? Or is this kind of the thing and you're content with what this is? And
I am always willing to try new things. Trying different video styles, trying different techniques. I find something like, I want to try that. Let's try it. Okay, cool. So I'm always down for whatever. The podcast has been my journey recently. It's been awesome. I feel like I'm like a celebrity going on different like late night talk shows. It's like doing my little media rounds.
yeah,
So that's been really, really cool, and I've really, really enjoyed that. A lot of them have very similar questions, which is fine, but then they have like the 5 or 6 curveball questions. You're like, ooh, I didn't even think about that. Let's dive into that, which has been really, really fun. So that's been the journey now. I think as Oshkosh gets a little bit closer, I may try and find some stuff to do related to that, because I'm planning on going again this year. I don't know if that's I don't even know. I don't even know what it could be. So I'm very open to just taking each day as it is. I think in a few weeks I'm going to be going to Florida and flying with one of my followers, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
So I think
That's
that'll be
cool.
really, really cool.
Yeah.
He's flying back to somewhere and then flying back to Florida the next day, and it's over one of my weekends, so it's really nice, very convenient. But he's going to Sun and Fun.
Oh, cool.
Fly with him there and then fly back to work, which is great. Don't actually get to go to Sun and Fun, which is unfortunate, but is what it is. Oshkosh is fine, as it's a good consolation prize. I've never actually been to Sun and Fun. Have you been?
I have not. But being from the Midwest, I can only acknowledge that Oshkosh is like the only one you should go to. So for you personally, what is the most rewarding part of your job?
I think knowing that whenever I go home, I helped people who are flying from point A to point B get there safely. I think that's the whole reason why air traffic control is there. It's to provide that service to ensure the safety of the flying public. And you can't take that for granted. Every day you have to fight for that, and you have to fight for safety, and you have to fight for communicating for safety. And you have to ensure it. And unfortunately, in this world, accidents happen. And how do you move on from that? And how do you make sure that doesn't happen again? And that, I think, is a very rewarding part. And that's why I also enjoy doing this social media stuff, is because every day I'm learning something new that hopefully I never have to use in the real world. But if I do, I will have been exposed to it, and I'll be able to do it and be able to understand what's going on, right? A pilot saying, hey, we're bingo fuel. They don't teach us that. Okay, what does that mean? Well, pilot's running out of gas. Okay, well, that's an emergency. Okay, here you go. X, Y, and Z, right? Or, hey, our airspeed indicator's not working. I'm single pilot IFR. Airspeed indicator's not working. Just as simple like, hey, turn on your pitot heat, like
Right.
just that little thing, just a little reminder, of things that I'm learning from the pilots in the comments. Like, here's what we're experiencing. Whenever you're saying this is what we're doing. And, I'm explaining what we're doing on our side. And so being able to bridge that gap, if I can use the stereotypical term, to have better understanding of both sides of the flight deck, I think makes the NAS safer, at least for the people who are actively trying to learn every day, right? Because you don't have to, once you certify, you don't have to keep learning. You don't have an instructor plugged in behind you. You don't, you have, over the shoulders with your supervisor every now and then, but you don't have to keep learning. Same thing with flying. I would imagine once you're an airline pilot, you fly the same airplane every day. It gets pretty routine, right? How do you fight that complacency? How do you fight that? By actively trying to keep in the books, keep in the regulations, keep in the stuff to ensure that you are not becoming complacent, to ensure that you are following the rules, to ensure that you know what rules you can break if something happens, right? That requires you to break them. A lot of pilots are scared of declaring emergencies. That's the easiest way to remove limitations from the controller side, right? A topic that I talk about is in Jacksonville, big thunderstorms. You're trying to get deviations. You can't get a word in edgewise. you finally get a word in edgewise. They say unable deviations because you got traffic off your left, traffic off your right, traffic above you, traffic below you. Okay, well, you're about to fly into a thunderstorm. And I guess those other people are also about to fly into a thunderstorm, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do? Well, one, try and offer a solution to the controller. Hey, I can go like 15 left. I can go up 100 feet. I can go or 1,000 feet or whatever to try and get away. But we have standard separation that we have to maintain, 5 miles or 1,000 feet above flight level 240 or 230, or 3 miles and 1,000 feet below flight level 230. That we have to maintain. If we don't maintain it, that's a deal, and that's bad, right? But if you declare an emergency, okay, now you can do whatever you need to do in order to keep your airplane safe, right? That allows us to lose that standard separate. I mean, 5 miles is a large distance. Like, if you stand outside and you try and look 5 miles, like the curvature of the earth happens before you can see the end of 5 miles, right? I think. I don't know.
I won't coach you on it.
Yeah. But like 5 miles is a far distance. And so as long as, we're giving you the traffic alerts, we're saying, hey, there's a traffic here, there's traffic here, there's traffic here. You can, quote unquote, bust that standard separation because it's an emergency. And that's what you have to do in order to keep your aircraft safe. And whenever you land, sure, they may say, hey, just tell us what happened. Well, I was about to fly into a thunderstorm, and for the safety of flight, I had to deviate, and I had to declare an emergency. Nobody is going to say, well, you shouldn't have done that. Oh, so you would have rather me I guess I'll die. Like there's no middle ground here, right? That's a very defensible position. Help us help you. Tell us what you need in the moment. If you're single pilot, even if you're dual pilot, but you're both just task saturated. If you need the weather, if you need the NOTAMs, if you need runway length, if you need whatever, we have all of that information. If your Starlink isn't working and you need to call your ops for whatever and so I think big takeaway, air traffic control is here as a tool, as a support. We're not out to get you. We just want you to get from point A to point B safely. It's not a responsibility that we take lightly. And it's something that it's an important job, and not everybody can do it. But the people that can do it are the best of the best. And so I think it's cool to be a part of that, to achieve it, from my 8th grade dreams to now, to finally achieve that goal, is really, really cool. And it's something that I don't take for granted every day.
I think you answered it very well.
Yeah.
I mean, especially realizing a childhood goal or dream to, you're screwing around on Flight Sim 10 and now here you are doing it for real. Good for you.
Yeah, it's cool. It's definitely cool.
I cannot thank you enough, Marcus, for coming on the podcast, spending some time with me, talking all about not just ATC, but your content creation. I really enjoy what you do. I hope that others will check you out if they haven't already. We can find you pretty much anywhere at Prop Hat Cat, right?
Mm-hmm. Prop Hat Cat, PROPHATCAT.
Wonderful. So I'll put that in our show notes as well so people can find it. But I just thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast.
Well, I want to say a big thank you to Marcus for joining me on this episode of the podcast. I hope you learned as much from it as I did. I just really think it's fun to see what happens behind the curtain inside of the center. So one of the things I really appreciated from him is taking the time to explain a bit the training process and how long that really takes. I think a lot of people take that for granted, that you just go to the academy in Oklahoma City and then you're a controller. Ta-da, finished. These controllers put in so much time and effort to become fully certified within their facility. And it's just really incredible the amount of work and the dedication that these folks have to their craft. It was also cool to hear how he came about doing his content creation. And his goal is just to help people understand what's going on with air traffic control. And he does it in these short little segments that really cover some pretty interesting topics, and he covers them very well. So if you are not following him, definitely go ahead and give him a follow. He's on all of the social media platforms, Prop Hat Cat. All right, so as we wrap up this episode, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, please like, follow, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a rating or review wherever you are getting this podcast. It really helps to boost my spirits and to get the podcast out to other people through spreading it in the algorithm. So thank you in advance. And if you want to help support what I'm doing, click on the show notes or the description of this video. Go ahead and scroll on down there, click on our affiliate links for Flying Eyes eyewear, as well as Lightspeed headsets. Both great products, both products I use when I fly. You're going to love them. There's also a link for AeroExploration merch at flyingmidwest.com/merch, or you can join us on Patreon. All those links down in the description below. All right, well, that is going to do it for us on this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. This is AeroExploration, and we'll see you next time.